I'm answering the question from Tony, what do I want to see? For 2 years, I was living in Burundi, having lived for 5 years before that in Mozambique, because all was not well in Zimbabwe. I came home in December, but really more in January to participate in the elections, because I was encouraged by what happened in November. I thought the November development was a positive development. It moved us forward. You had a new leader or a new arrangement. So I thought, well, let me come and assist, which I did. When I came, I had a Zanu Pf identity, because I've been Zanu Pf for 45 years. I put my name in to stand for Zanu Pf, which failed. And I think it's a common secret, it's been in the newspaper. I'm one of those that were disqualified for reasons given by the party, which reasons I don't agree with, and I made it known to the party. As a result, I proceeded to stand as an independent, knowing full well that I was judged before I even took to the street, because those that were looking at me, to all intents and purposes, were looking at a Zanu Pf person. And those comments were around me throughout the campaign. The message was, if you win, will you take your seat back to Zanu Pf, kind of thing. And some would say, if you know, how do we know if we vote for you, you're not going to take your seat to Zanu Pf? I really didn't get too deep into all that. I expected that. It was very clear there were people who thought that I was a friend. I accepted that, as much as I knew it was not true. Through the campaign, up to 3 weeks ago in my constituency, it was very clear that we were having a free and fair election of some kind. And I use the word of some kind on purpose because, as I've said on radio and in the media, I was posting posters on trees, in streets, and wherever, and the next morning they would not be there. And it was very strange that on a number of occasions, where my poster was pulled down, somebody put his poster there. So it was obvious who had pulled my poster down. There was all kinds of utterances as we went through the campaign, and I will not bore you with those. At the end of the day, in the last 2 weeks, there was a lot of presidential inputs being dished out. We all know that. That's an open secret. There was a lot of food maize being given out. I don't remember the technical name for that. But you know, maize is given out to people out, mostly in villages, but it also came to the urban part of my constituency. I stood in Zimbabwe East, which has 5 wards and has peri-urban and rural. Peri-urban being what we all know as Snake Park, Mount Hamden, Nyabira, Rideau Ridge, White Cliff, and those sort of areas. And maize was being given to people. And it was it was there in public that if you support Mende, you're not going to get maize. And all those kind of things. And then it escalated there was massive intimidation. The traditional leaders and party structures, party people being expelled for being Mende people, right up to the day when we were voting. We went to any of our polling stations without a shadow of doubt. There were little groups that were on the roads and paths that led to the polling station that were intimidating people that were going to vote, including what happened at the queues at Inkomo Barracks, where big chaps came to the queues and told the chaps to vote wisely. I heard it with my own ears. I didn't have the guts to approach the individuals that were doing that. I went to the observer, but I threw my hands in the air when I discovered that one of the observers was in fact a war veteran. So I decided I wasn't going to bother. And I know the individual. So you are listening to a Zimbabwean that is very disturbed. Because what I expected when I came in January is not what I saw 10 days into the 30th of July. And worse, when the killings a day or two occurred. I thought Zimbabwe had moved forward. I was encouraged by what was in the media about our nation. So cut a long story short, what would I be expecting? Well, clearly I'm sure you can see that I did not expect food handouts during the campaign. I did not expect presidential input during the campaign. Never in the history of our country have we had presidential inputs being given in July. They're normally given around about August, September, ready for the season. And it's a strange coincidence that they should come out at the same time that we had elections. So for me, if I was to express a view, ideally I would have wanted a dream that says 3 weeks ago, we wind our clocks to 3 weeks ago, where there was no fighting, and that the hooligans that were pulling down posters would be educated by somebody not to do that, and that there would be no inputs at that time, there would be no presidential stuff at that time, no maize at that time, and no intimidation at that time. But because then people would then be freely expressing themselves. Our people did not freely express themselves. If the 74% that my brother is talking about is the result of the numbers that walked, if those people had been a free people, it would help. But like has been said by others, in the streets and in the media, it's very strange that we did not see spontaneous reaction into the streets of celebrating people once a group had won. Whether it's MDC that says they won 60% or whatever number it is, or it is Zanu Pf that is saying, said by ZEC to have won 50.8. Neither of those two sides have jumped into the streets to celebrate. And it must speak volumes. It must also be very disturbing when you walk into town and you look Copacabana, look at what has happened to Copacabana. People earn a living out of Copacabana. And, Copacabana does not exist anymore. So the vendors are not in the streets. Jobs have not emerged out of ZEC on the 30th of July, which could be the excuse for Copacabana being paralyzed. So I hope I've said something about what I would have wanted to, what I would want to see.
Thank you very much.
I'll take you, then I'll come.
All right, thank you. My name is Ashton. I wanted to respond to